Hello, energy enthusiasts and clean energy fans. Welcome to Trina Talks, where we have short conversations that speak volumes. I'm Melissa Kavanaugh, Marketing Manager with Trina Solar US, and your host of Trina Talks. So, on today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. Much like how Trina's modules pack more efficiency and more power into a small footprint, we're going to talk about how Trina Talks has packed more insightful knowledge and conversations in a very short amount of time. And I wanted to share some of the more insightful moments that we've had on Trina Talks in 2025. From groundbreaking PV technology advancements to saving millions on your solar projects and some fun along the way. Here are the top moments from our Trina Talks episodes in 2025. But before we plug in, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to receive new episodes of Trina Talks on the first Thursday of every month. For the very first episode of Trina Talks, we welcomed Bobby Namuel, Presale Engineering Manager with Trina Solar US. He shared his single biggest takeaway from the LCOE assessment done with Black & Veatch on Trina Solar's innovative 2000 volt Vertex N module. Vertex N 2000 volt represents a major step forward from the 1500 volt system that is standard throughout the industry. Let's let Bobby talk about the benefits.
So the model that we ran, what we observed in our calculations, we observed about 17.5% of inverter cost savings because of the fewer inverters that's going to be needed. There's a 8.2% savings in the balance of system capital expense costs. Overall, for the construction, overall capital expense was a $2.3 million difference between the 2000 volt system and the 1500 volt system. And overall, when we take a look at the energy production and performance, we observe a levelized cost of energy drop of about 86 cents per megawatt hour. So basically, it's a drop from $54.66 to $53.80 per megawatt hour. All of this with virtually the same annual energy being injected into the grid for both two systems.
Well said, Bobby. The 2000 volt system is going to completely reshape project economics for utility scale, commercial, and community solar projects. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that. Episodes 2 through 5 were recorded live at RE Plus 2025 in Las Vegas. And I'm not going to lie, recording 4 live episodes in the Trina booth at RE Plus was definitely more of a marathon. And we couldn't have done it without 4 of the best guests that joined us on our stage for our live Trina Talks episodes. For episode 2, I was joined by John Privitali, Senior Principal Engineer with VDE Americas. He discussed how VDE Americas is testing modules like Trina's Vertex N hail and wind resistant modules, to simulate failure rates and hail damage probability to lower annual average losses in solar projects. Let's hear what John has to say about America's $1 million hail problem.
On the VDE America side, we've developed a meteorological and physics-based model that helps utility scale developers and operators and financiers understand the risk of hail at specific locations, and also using different types of PV modules at different tracker tilts. And then on the RETC side, since they're a test lab, we co-developed a new test that's called the Hail Resiliency Curve Test that takes a palette of 25 to 30 randomly selected modules and subjects them to up to 20 different shots from a pneumatic hail cannon that shoots freezer ice balls up to 90 miles per hour. And with that testing, we're able to simulate the probability of failure at different kinetic energy levels for individual PV modules. That, combined with our physics-based model and meteorological data, gives us a really good estimate of what the hail loss would be at a particular area with a specific PV module.
With hail damage accounting for millions in losses, VDE Americas and Trina Solar are working together to mitigate risk and withstand hail damage. On the next episode that was live at RE Plus, we continued the conversation about extreme weather and also talked about the importance of business relationships and partnerships in the solar industry. I was joined by Clark Galloway, Regional Sales Manager for the Southeast region with Solagent. And we talked about some key elements that are important when developing business relationships, as well as providing outstanding customer service in a region that is challenged with extreme weather.
Creating a true one-stop shop solution is what Solagent in Florida is doing. It's starting to ripple out into the rest of the nation for solar. So really just relying on those partnerships to make a better difference is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is the partnership between Solagent and Trina? How has that emerged and grown for your Southeast market?
Trina has always been one of the closest partnerships for me personally here. And a big reason of that is Ken Simon. I have to give a shout out to Ken because he's just such a great individual. And he's really supported us at the installer level, willing to get out on the roof even in some cases if he needs to make sure that what we're doing is the right choice for the installer. So Solagent, again, we rely heavily on our partnerships to be the driving force of our success, being the installer success, creating a successful install. And I just have to give so much love to Ken Simon and the rest of the Trina team for including us as a partner. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Ken because he is absolutely amazing.
Thanks so much for your insights, Clark. We really appreciate you being on Trina Talks. On day 2 of RE Plus 2025, I was joined by Tristan Ryan Larico, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Kiwa Pivel. Now, Tristan is well known across the industry, and the conversation was really fun. We talked about the reliability scorecard, but what I'd like to highlight on this episode is Tristan's advice for module procurement that I think is really valuable for anyone watching. Here's what Tristan had to say about the critical process. So I know right now a lot of companies are racing to stock up on modules, get their projects moving because of U.S. policy changes. What insights can you give developers or procurement teams? What should they be aware of? What should they keep an eye out for? What do they need to know when they're looking for modules?
Well, I think, as part of the Kiwa group, where our colleagues, Kiwa PI Berlin, as well as us on the Tesla, Kiwa Pivel, we have our procurement best practices, and those have never been more important. I keep thinking that maybe one day this industry will mature and you won't need factory audits, you won't need third-party testing. If anything, we're seeing that the need for that is higher. So, I think people buying modules and putting them in a warehouse, safe harboring, it's even more important to make sure that the bill of material you're purchasing has been fully vetted through a program like our PQP. Make sure you have third-party auditors like our colleagues at Kiwa PI Berlin going into the factory, doing pre-production factory audits, doing production oversight. We're seeing a lot more batch testing of modules particularly those being produced in the U.S., coming to our lab and doing testing throughout the production runs to make sure that there isn't any unseen issues in those modules. So, just follow those best practices. They've been well established. It's nothing new. It's not rocket science, but it's even more important to follow it now. And don't let the rush to buy modules and to lock in things for these tax credits. You forget to do your due diligence, and then you end up with an asset that is underperforming in the long run.
And we can't forget that Trina received the Top Performer Award for the 2025 Reliability Scorecard. That's the 11th consecutive year that Trina has received the Top Performer Award, and it was an honor to receive that from Tristan at the show on behalf of Trina. In our final live episode at RE Plus, I was joined by Luis Montoya, Chief Systems Engineer with Trina Storage. And we talked about how Trina Storage is redefining energy storage well beyond spreadsheets and warranties. Luis talked about the design aspects of the Elementa 2 Pro platform that really benefit customers. Let's hear from Luis.
One of the main features, as I mentioned, the DNA from Trina is in the battery design. I would say is the modularity. Big modularity of our system allows you to replace some sections of it, very quick. Some modules, swap them if something needs to be modified. So that's kind of that flexibility in the design that allows you to maintain easily. Our Gen 2 Pro has the flexibility of having independent racks and with the possibility of having a centralized or string inverter solution. So it's going to be quite simple, not simple, but it's going to be easier to swap an entire section of the container and being able to continue the operation. So that's part of the design. Another thing that it's very important in our Gen 2 Pro as a feature that comes into play in this success of the product is the understanding of energy density. Customers have to pay a lot of money for space, right? So Trina has been focused on improving those KPIs or aspects of the design that can really facilitate or increase the energy densities. How much energy you can put in the same area. And those are aspects that have been understood in design, come into the flexibility of the product. Now we have this unit that you can install in something we call a quad, back to back, and there's no space. You can install 4 units next to each other with no space, very, very tiny space in between. So that's a huge advantage, and that's only something that I feel like we have learned through looking at the customers, listening to their needs, and making these changes to adjust and improve. Right. So, yeah.
We also have to take a look at the immersive energy storage display that was in the Trina booth at RE Plus because it was absolutely a showstopper. The video doesn't do it enough justice, but I can assure you that it was such a cool visual display in person. Even though Trina Talks was a major highlight in the Trina booth at RE Plus 2025, there were many other things happening at that show. And that's why for episode 6, I was joined back in the studio by Kevin Andrews, Market Research Manager for Trina Solar. And we talked about our top 10 takeaways from the show this year, our top winning hands. So let's take a look.
Yeah, so the number one takeaway for me is holy moly, we are going to need a lot more electricity in this country. It seemed like every conversation I had, every session that I popped into, there were people or panelists speaking about data centers and the enormous load growth that those are bringing here to the U.S. grid. And so whether it is from a national competitive standpoint, whether it is from an economic driver point of view, I think the general consensus is that we're going to need a lot more power and we are going to need it quickly. And enter solar plus storage. It is pretty uniquely situated
Mhm.
to not only provide the necessary power, but also scale quickly, which is important considering the need and the immediacy of that need.
Yeah. Yeah. While we were at RE Plus, there was another event, a data center event dedicated to the data center sector, the YADA event. And I was talking with some colleagues that went over to the data center side. And what you just said, holy moly, do we need a lot of energy? So if that was your number one key takeaway of RE Plus, just add the exclamation point to that. And that's what the conversation was about over at Yada. So the data centers, as you had mentioned, the demand for energy, it's incredible. And the people over on the data center side understand that they need to generate a ton of energy. They also know that they are going to need to get that energy from multiple different sources. So, in walks the help from the renewable energy industry and all of the experts that, you and I talked with the whole time we were at the show.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things going on. I mean, these are pretty sophisticated. I hate to use the term customer, but these are pretty
Mhm.
sophisticated energy users, right? And so there's some really unique partnerships taking place between large data center customers and their utility. Some really
Mhm.
interesting things taking place with on-site generation, whether that's front of the meter or behind the meter or a combination of both. I think there are a lot of really smart people looking at this problem in really specific and intentional ways, which is good.
We also had a bonus key takeaway. Let's check that out. Evan, what's the bonus takeaway?
You actually told me this, so feel free to chime in here when I mess it up. But my understanding is that RE Plus will no longer be a September event. They're going to move it to the first week in November and have it be perma Vegas. So it will remain in
Yes.
Vegas instead of hopping back and forth.
Yeah, that's big news for anybody who,
Big time.
is kind of behind the scenes and planning these events months and months in advance. So, yes, from now on, the RE Plus show will be in Vegas, not bouncing back and forth between Las Vegas and Anaheim. And it will be at the newly renovated Las Vegas Convention Center. I kind of like that, Kevin. What do you think about, the new like November, late fall timing?
Yeah, I love it. I have missed the first day of preschool the last 3 years with my last three RE Plus shows. So beginning of November can be a tough time in House Andrews. I'm sure other families and people are experiencing something similar. So I'm totally open to it. I'm happy I get to, although this last year was my last first day of preschool. Next year it'll be the last first day of kindergarten for my
Oh my
youngest.
gosh.
So I will
But
be here for that, which is
yeah.
good. And then also like week before Thanksgiving, it's gonna kind of have like reunion vibes, right? Like when you go home and you meet up with all your old friends.
Mhm.
I wonder if it'll strike a similar vibe with the PV and storage industries out in Las Vegas the week before Thanksgiving.
So mark your calendars accordingly. November starting in 2026. On our most recent episode, episode number 7, I was joined by Ethan Ely, product manager with Trina Solar US, to talk about the 7 world records that Trina has broken in the last year for solar efficiency and power. In this clip, Ethan talks about the world records that were shattered with tandem technology. This segment is a little bit more technical, but I'm sure the engineers in the audience will love it. Let's talk about tandem technology and the records that are being broken there. I was just with you at PV Cell Tech, and didn't it seem like every conversation kept coming back to that one word, tandem? That's what everyone was talking about. Everyone was interested in it.
It was certainly the buzz of the conference, and I think technology that a lot of people are working towards, and it's exciting to see so much collective effort working towards that technology. Trina's been doing a lot of work to advance the efficiency and work towards putting this in a module. And so that goes in stages. It starts from the lab scale with very small cells. It moves on to the cell size, an individual cell, then to the module. And we've seen some pretty impressive advancements in all of those tiers. So on the cell side, in just a year, we went from an efficiency of about 26% all the way up to 31.1%, hitting a world record there. And then again, just a few months later, to 32.2%. So that's 2 world records in the span of a year on the tandem cell technology. Then we worked on developing this cell into an actual module format, interconnecting the cells and proving the efficiency possibilities with a module level. And we hit an efficiency of 30.6%, also a world record, and the first tandem perovskite module to breach the 30% module threshold.
So to clarify, that would be 2 cell efficiency records and 1 module efficiency record. So another 3 world records right there, for a total of 4 new efficiency world records. These 7 breakthroughs are going to drive the solar industry into a new era of performance. Thank you for joining me on this special episode of Trina Talks, where we have short conversations that were even shorter, but still spoke volumes. We have so many great episodes planned for 2026, and I can't wait to share more Trina Talks with you on the first Thursday of every month. So be sure to subscribe and share the video with your project team. Until next time, may your LCOE be low, your efficiency high, and your systems optimized. I'm Melissa Cavanaugh, and this is Trina Talks.